Hello and welcome to the latest in the Field Service News webinar series. I'm Kris Oldland, I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Field Service News, and I'm joined for this session by Tesseract's Kevin McNally. Kevin, great to see you. How are you doing?
Hi Kris, very well thanks.
So today's conversation is going to be 5 fundamental field service management technologies, and we're going to be looking at some best practices, and we're going to be seeing some demonstrations of the Tesseract tool as well, which will kind of give us a good flavour for exactly how the Tesseract solution works, but also just how these kind of technologies work in place. Just so that you know the framework of today's session, we're going to look at each of these areas one after the other. We'll have a conversation about it, we'll look at the demonstration, and then at the end of the session we're going to have a Q&A. So you'll see on the right hand side of your screen there is a chat box labeled questions. Any questions you have for Kevin regarding how these best tools and these best practices of utilising these tools, any questions around that area, please pop them in the box and we'll get through as many of the questions as we can. We're going to be looking at contract management, we're going to be looking at scheduling, we're going to be looking at mobile tools, and a couple of questions around communications. We're going to be looking at parts and inventory management, which for me is one that is crucially important. And of course we're going to be looking at integration and how all of these systems should talk to each other. How does your FSM solution talk to your accounting system, your ERP? And we'll kind of be looking at that from an operations perspective, trying to get our heads around some of the jargon and the technology there. But first of all, Kevin, perhaps you could just give us a couple of minutes of explaining yourself, your position, and tell us a little bit about Tesseract as well.
Thanks Kris. Yes, my name's Kevin McNally. I'm the Sales Director here at Tesseract. I've been with Tesseract now for about 12 years. Tesseract has been in the market for just over 30 now. And all we provide is one tool, which is a service management platform. Recently acquired last year by a company called Evatic from Norway, who also specialise in service management. They're far more aligned in the copy print market, but they've brought us into the fold to allow us some growth across the generic service management platform. Also, they're strategically more across Europe, so it will give us a better growth into those markets as well. My background, Kris, I've been in service since leaving college. Okay. I've been a service manager of a number of copy print companies, and so understanding what day-to-day people are going through in a service arena and empathising with what are the key problems out there.
Okay, Kevin, so let's look at the first of the 5 key fundamental technologies that we want to be looking at here and the kind of elements. The first of these is contract management. Why is it important that contract management is so well managed, and why is it important that what are the dangers basically of not getting it right?
Well, we see with most of our clients that the starting piece for everything is the contract and the control of that contract. Without that in place, it's very difficult to bring everything else on top of that. So from the point of view understanding the assets or the entitlement that the customer is entitled to as we go through the process, whether that be raising a service call, raising a sales order, we need to understand fundamentally what should we be doing with the entitlement for this particular client. So this really is core to the building blocks of the service management tool in our world. It's the starting piece. It's often overlooked by some of the fancier pieces within the system as a whole, but without this, nothing really functions through.
And just briefly, I assume there's also, without good contract management in place, there's a danger of giving away service for free, which when we live in a world where most service companies are now moving towards being a profit centre, that's kind of critical, isn't it?
Absolutely, Kris. The idea being that we can't miss anything through the process, and if we have the building blocks, at the end of the process, we don't want teams of people going through job sheets looking for, does the customer pay for this, does the customer pay for that? If we front load systems without control, then this will be the workflow.
Okay, so let's have a look at the solution.
Okay, this is the Tesseract Service Center 5.1 product, and we've landed on the home page, which can be personalized to the users, so as they log in they can see what's relevant to them. Firstly, Kris, we're going to concentrate on contract management, which is part of the customer assets piece within Service Center.
Sure.
Within here, multiple layers. We have in our world a relationship between the customer, the sites that they maintain, those assets that are maintained on those sites, and also the contracts that pertain to those. Just to give a little look and feel, within our world, and this is all made up data, we're going to have a look at a customer record. For many of our people, many of our customers, we're really interested in looking at in one screen a lot of information. While we're looking at a customer, we may be interested in the contracts that they have with us. In this case, there are multiples. Also, the sites that we're looking after for this particular customer. Here we can see lots of different sites. We just drill down a little bit further, going into a lot more detail about the site itself. Maintained on here are a list of all the assets that we maintain. Some of our clients aren't particularly interested in the assets. It may be more the services they provide. But in this world, we're going to have a look at some of those assets. Again, serialised and non-serialised. Different clients work in different ways when it comes to serialisation and control of those pieces of equipment. Drilling down now to the actual assets itself, and for a lot of our clients, they hold a lot of information about those assets, where they are, what they look after within those assets, the entitlement. But in this world, what we're really interested in are the contracts themselves that are pertained to this particular asset. Talking about the contract side of things, most of our customers are interested in the type of contracts that they have with customers. In this world, what is the entitlement? What's included, what's not included? This is an all-inclusive contract, so within this we're not going to bill for time or materials. So more of a traditional warranty type approach, but many clients may bill for the time, may bill for some of those parts. The idea of some parts being included on a contract, but others not. And from our world, what we call cover code, and many people in the service world will call coverage, when are the clocks actually ticking? When do we have to get to sites? How quick do we have to get there? And this can obviously be based on severity of faults, but in a traditional service management, we're covering this 8 till 6, 7 days a week, excluding public holidays, and a response time of 4 hours for us to get to the site, look after that particular asset. Just looking again at the asset itself, for a lot of our clients, they're very much interested in bill of materials. How is this asset made up? Clients may be swapping units within assets. They may want control of that. So we go down to a further level. And pertain to the asset and the asset management are planned maintenance routines. If clients are interested in planned maintenance, if we look a little further down the screen, we have our planned maintenance, how quick we've got to get there. For certain industries, we're very much interested in times of the day that we have access to site, whether it's medical, whether it's catering. Can't necessarily take equipment offline while the customer wants to use it. So pre-agreed times to come in and service equipment. Coming on to the contractual side of things, the assets that are contained within a contract, we can see in this instance there are many assets contained back to a single contract of various different types. Obviously, the most important part in the process is billing for our contracts. And further down, we have how we bill, whether it's an advance in arrears, whether they're time and material contracts, reoccurring revenues. And this is the information at the end of the process that will be billed to the client based on all the rules within the database. One point, we also cover meter billing. In a traditional sense was from the copy print market, but we see more and more people looking at a usage-based type contract. So the system will control usage-based as well as straightforward service activity-based billing.
One quick question. Obviously, it's great for this information to be visible for the engineer on site. Do they have access to this? And, for example, if a client's just coming out of warranty or if they're within a certain months of warranty, can the engineer access that information? So maybe on site he can say, look, this is in warranty, but it looks like it might be worth, if this happened 2 weeks later, you're going to be in a world of pain. You might want to speak to your sales guy. Absolutely, and this is we try, and this is a delicate area of how much is enough for the engineers to view, and the customer is in charge of this type of information. But it's very important that the engineer can see this is a gold all-inclusive contract, for example. This is a warranty type contract. So with start dates, termination dates, if that information is useful for the engineer in part of his communication with the customer. And just one last point on that is, obviously there's a lot of information here which is easily accessed on a desktop or a laptop, but perhaps might be overwhelming on a mobile device. Is it configurable so you can identify what the engineer can see on a site via the mobile?
Yeah, absolutely. This piece is more about information for the office, but with the engineer access, it's very defined to screen levels. The system itself, as you can see, is been designed to run on a tablet. The idea being we use the whole real estate. So the core application could be used, for example, on an iPad. If the service manager was out visiting a customer, they can work online exactly the same as being in the office, but with all the information to hand, should they want to see first-time fixed rates and they didn't print that information before going to site.
Now, the next on our list, Kevin, is scheduling. And personally, even having spent a lot of time looking at tools like your own, that's what I do for my job. I still get confused by the difference between the various layers of scheduling, especially when we start talking about optimized, dynamic, assisted, etc. So perhaps you can just kind of give us a bit of guidance on what those definitions are and why scheduling is so crucial.
Absolutely, Chris. Various different levels that we provide at Tesseract, and it really is dependent on the client. Scheduling is hugely important, but we have many clients that are not really running around doing a lot of jobs. They may be doing one job a day, possibly one a week. And we have others that are doing lots and lots of calls, whether they're planned or they're reactive. Within Tesseract, we offer different options. Assisted, we also offer optimized, and we also partner with some of the dynamic scheduling products that are in the market. Dynamic scheduling isn't our forte. It's not our expertise, so we work with the experts in that market. But most of our clients are content with the scheduling pieces that we offer and offering them great solutions.
So, just to pick up on the syntax or the words or the terminology, I'm a big fan of kind of the crystal clear watermark. Maybe it's just because I don't get it myself.
Sure.
But what's the difference between optimized and dynamic? Is dynamic something that's, I'm guessing, happens in real time, whereas optimized is
absolutely
one layer below? Or
absolutely. In our world, our optimized scheduling tends to be more geared at the plan maintenance routine of market who are looking to do things in advance but looking for the best possible routes. We have a web service that sends it out to an optimized engine and will bring back the best available plan. Dynamic would be more constantly rescheduling those jobs as road conditions are changing, as jobs are going over. So tends to be the two differences regarding scheduling.
And in terms of like for the guys listening in, is there like a generic rule of thumb? Is it just a case that if I have 800 engineers, I should have something dynamic? If I have 500, I should have something optimized? If I have 50, I should have something assisted? Or is it more, are there other layers? Is it about the complexity of the job, if I need 2 guys on the site or I need certain qualifications, etc.?
Absolutely, Chris. And we see this very different in different markets. Again, it depends on SLAs, how quick we have to react, how quickly moving the company is. Many of our clients don't move that quick. They're looking to plan jobs in, confirm them with clients. So it's more about designing plans rather than reactive scheduling. So very much dependent on each client, but again, depending on numbers. Again, we have some large clients that have a lot of engineers running around, but they would tend to be regional offices. So the scheduling piece doesn't become as critical because it becomes more of a localized knowledge type process.
Okay, and just one more question before we kind of look at the solution and see how it looks and how it works. Obviously, we're continuously hearing more and more about outcome-based solutions, servitization, a number of different buzzwords around this concept of essentially moving towards planned or predictive maintenance. How does that impact on the scheduling conversation?
Again, many of our clients are looking at the Internet of Things to provide the data.
Sure.
And looking at possibly realigning their planned maintenance practices based on the data that's being fed back. So where in the past a piece of equipment may be getting serviced every year, they're realigning that to maybe bringing it forward based on what's actually happening with equipment in the field. Alternatively, equipment's becoming more reliable, so people are more aligning their planned maintenances with that information.
Okay, so let's have a look at how the scheduling engine looks and works.
Okay, now we're going to look at the scheduling piece, Chris. From here, let's add a service call. From the home page, this user has a call add set as a quick function, so we can go directly in, add a service call. And we can add a service call, obviously, from any piece of information, whether that be the customer's name, address, a path lookup. In this case, I'm going to go from the serial number, just to keep it simple. So from the serial number, we've picked up everything we know about this particular asset and site, and also the contract that's looking after this. In this case, talking about the integration piece, our financial system has put this customer on hold for whatever reason that may be. So warning the call controller, maybe we don't want to take this job at this point, but I'm just going to okay that. It's also warning me some other things that are slightly outside of the norm. It's warning me there's outstanding calls on this product I could drill through. There's outstanding job quotes. So lots of information that may be relevant depending on how the users implemented the system.
Cool.
I'm just going to define a call type and also the problem that the customer's reporting. We will see lots of other areas on the screen here, but this is again dependent on workflows. We may be moving this to a department, we may be moving it to a help desk. So this is where these other areas of the system will kick in. In this case, I'm just going to take the call. Just going to move this forward slightly. And from here, what we're looking to do is schedule the call in somebody's diary at this point. So we take the job, we get a job number. And as I say, my system now is saying, who have we got to do this job? Some of our clients put these into a pot for a scheduling team. Others are looking to schedule as they book the calls themselves. Simply by clicking on availability, the system is looking at a date range based on the SLA response, an area code, again defined by the client and how they regionalise their engineers, possibly a skill level. We may be looking at product groups that the engineers are trained on. And by simply clicking this, it will go away, it will look at all the slots in our engineers' diaries and come back with a list of all the available employees to go and do this work for me. It's also bringing in mapping calculations to show the nearest engineer. So this is our most basic form of scheduling, but it's looking to assist the user, not override the user.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it to Paul. It's going to pop it in his diary and warn me if any other warnings were generated. In this case, there are none. So let's just pop it straight into his diary. Now, views on diaries can be very personal for different customers. As you mentioned earlier, if they're going from T-cards, visibility is a key thing for them. So we have various different views depending on what our clients want to see. They may want to group engineers into regions. They may want to look at certain guys doing installation work, planned maintenance work. They may want to look at a snapshot of what we plan for our team for a day, which we can see here. We can also drag and drop, commonly asked for in the world of scheduling, where we can move calls around. We may also want to look at a longer range. We may want to look at what's going over a longer period. So we may say what's going on with our team across the next week, 2 weeks, 3 months, just from a visibility point of view. So it's very much about giving our customers different views depending on how they want to work with an off-the-shelf system. And one very new part added to the system is a live diary. Although our diary is about planning, scheduling and what we hope to achieve, a lot of people would like to see a real-time snapshot of what's going on now live with all our calls. So we have online real-time refreshing diaries, which will obviously move the calls as the engineers are dispatching, arriving, completing jobs, to give them visibility that maybe we could give this engineer another job. Another point we touched on with scheduling, we have what we call Diary Assist, which is our optimized scheduling tool. The idea being customers can send out groups of calls. Diary Assist will optimize them in a batch, send them back into the diary at the best possible routes, the best possible achieve. We touched on it earlier, it's not dynamic scheduling, it's optimized scheduling, it's looking for the best plans. It will not re-optimize unless the user asks it to be re-optimized and there are any changes to the plan. So one of the key differentiators between us and the optimized scheduling products out there.
But still, so I suppose this is a great tool for those that still want that human override, that kind of there are many companies. It is human nature in one sense to be reticent about handing over complete control, especially where there's not perhaps the greater benefit for an organisation if they haven't got the widest team, for example, to have that human control and allow them to make those calls as and when they're required on the fly. Yeah, absolutely.
We've seen with some of our clients they weren't quite ready for the leap of faith to fully autonomous scheduling, and we're offering a halfway house solution which has been driven by our customers' requirements.
Excellent. Now, the next on our list, Kevin, is for me perhaps the most unloved and unfocused on area, and criminally so. In field service, we talk so often about getting the right engineers with the right tools to the right job. Completely pointless unless you can get the right parts at the same time. I remember anecdotally kind of running a few roundtables out in Palm Springs at field service, and kind of made some notes with Ali Pinder from the Service Council, and both of us came across the topic that parts management was the one pain point that people are still talking about. We're talking about great things like IoT, augmented reality, quantum annealing in terms of pushing boundaries forward in computer processing, the benefits of cloud, all these great things, yet we still haven't got the parts management piece correct. So, I mean, how does that reflect with the conversations you have with your clients, your prospective clients, and what can we do to get that right?
Absolutely, it's a real fundamental piece that's overlooked by many clients, and they're looking to rectify it with systems. In our system, Tesseract, 20 years ago, our stock system did a bit of van stock, but the products evolved, the markets evolved, and as well, from a service perspective, many clients are running stock in financial packages, which generally do not lend themselves to stock moving around in the field, being utilised against jobs, against contracts. They tend to write off stock once it's invoiced, whereas in the real world, it's a little bit too late. If the engineers used it, that's now gone. So it's about real time, and it's about the flow through into the field and the usage in the field.
How important is it that the guy in the field has visibility into his inventory and also the availability? Because that must also not just be an efficiency piece for the field service provider. It's got to be quite a big customer satisfaction piece as well.
Absolutely. Being an engineer in the field, if you can tell the customer we've got it in stock, it'll be with you tomorrow, rather than we'll get back when we can, is a huge win. And it's something we've aligned our system to provide that information to the engineers so they can add that extra level of customer service.
Okay, look, I think it's a hugely important piece of the equation. Like I said, I think it's one that gets overlooked an awful lot. So let's just dive in and have a look at how your system works on that.
Now, Kris, we're going to have a look at Part Centre, as we call it, which is our stock and logistics module. Within here, it wouldn't do it justice to do a full demonstration. We really don't have time today. But to look at some of the key areas and some of the things that we find are really important. With any stock item, we're looking at multiple stock sites and very much about the control of parts through various different stock locations, whether that's engineers' vehicles, consignment stock on site, or our internal stock sites themselves. Various workflows through here, and some of the things that are very much about the service world. We look at supersession, alternative parts, some of the things that are key for service providers rather than for strict manufacturing. Within our Parts Centre module, we hold unlimited stock sites, also parts requests, which is very much about real-time information. Okay. An engineer in the field needing a part, we need to ship that quickly. We need real-time monitors, real-time escalation and visibility through the system. Another area that we look after particularly well is something we call repair orders. Although we have an internal workshop system within the Service Centre suite, many of our clients are sending items off to third parties for repair. So the full tracking of good, bad stock items through the process from an engineer doing a swap out to it coming back in finally back into our stock system as a good item to put back on the shelf. Again, stock takes, hugely important in field service, whether that's internal or also on the engineer's app, we can run stock takes from a stock perspective, just to make sure we're aligning with our stock figures back to the system. We control purchase orders and direct sales orders as well. So a lot of our clients are selling parts directly from the system. And the benefit from that is if we have a contracted rate or something within the contract to say X amount of consumables are included, going back to the contract management piece, moving through to the stock piece, the system knows not to bill part of the contract entitlement.
Excellent. Just one quick point now, just to go back to the repair order and all these pieces. So if I've got this right, you can kind of cover not only the service life cycle and the parts asset and parts inventory and management piece from the field, from back office, but also cover the whole reverse logistics chain as well, from kind of if we go back to the repair centre.
Absolutely. As much so that we can even, one of our engineers can define which workshop internally we want to send the item back to for repair, if you allow them to do that. So it's really about workflows, it's about configurability, but ultimately keeping track of parts going out and coming back. Okay, and as you mentioned at the top there, I think that there's a lot more we can dive into in the parts management piece, but obviously we're restricted a little bit by time trying to cover a number of areas and give a broader overview, but I'm sure if people want to kind of contact you to talk a little bit more about the functionality as parts centre management, you'll be reaching out to these guys. Absolutely, yeah, great.
Excellent. Okay, great. So now perhaps is the piece that I always think of as probably the most critical in terms of the field, for the field service engineer, the next workflow at least, and that's mobile. But is it just about getting the information out to the engineer? Is it just mirroring what the back end system is showing him, or what are the other considerations that we should be thinking? Because mobile seems to be evolving every 5 minutes.
Absolutely, it's constantly moving. From our take on the mobile piece, it is about mirroring the information and making that information real time, but at the same time controlling it, making it understandable for the technicians, and not taking over their workload to become a hindrance to them actually fixing the equipment.
Okay, and we're seeing technologies come into the fore here. Of there's a raft of different technologies. For example, communication pieces. I was having a really interesting conversation the other day about how much technology we need to put into just simple communications, because surely SMS is just as capable as WhatsApp or a derivative. What's your kind of take on that in terms of the messaging, both from engineer to back office, but also more and more we're seeing engineer to engineer and that kind of peer-to-peer knowledge sharing piece?
This is an area of growth we're seeing and being driven by our clients. Where we're currently developing a new mobile solution to move forward with the times. The current solution is run by thousands of engineers, but these are the sort of new technologies that we're looking to embrace and bring into the product.
And one last question on the mobile piece is I assume there's a lot of focus that has to go on the user experience and the user interface on the UI, especially when we're looking at engineers perhaps being bringing on a device, but also just if it's a rugged device, even if it's geared towards getting that quick engagement. The UI has to be quite a big focus. How big a challenge is that for companies? How important is that? Is it important that it's easy and it looks pretty and it's intuitive? Or
Absolutely. Many people overlook the buy-in of their field team as part of this process, particularly when they're buying an all-encompassing solution. They may get focused on the internal scheduling, the contract management, and forget about the engineers, but we have to keep it simple, intuitive. We have many clients that don't use their own engineers as subcontracting. So from that point of view, it has to be easy to deploy, easy to turn off, and also make sure that there's no information on there that people shouldn't be viewing out in the field.
Well, that brings me actually to one last final point on this. Mobile device management, mobile security. Obviously, there's a lot of critical data that engineers are able to bring in, and that's part and parcel of the great aspect of having the engineer out and being able to kind of pool that data and add that layer of insight. But is that something like mobile device management, that security piece, is that something that you would say should remain best of breed? So you should go to a company that's a specialist in that so that you can kind of get that whole security across every deployment, whether it be Android, iOS, Windows, etc.
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is a hot topic at the moment, and it's been very much apparent that you need experts in that field. So although we will control and the customers themselves have control of the data passing backwards and forwards, we have clients with 10 engineers and thousands of engineers, and many of those are governed by their own corporate compliance. So from that point of view, we would always engage a best of breed supplier from a security perspective.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to have a look at that now.
Now we're going to look at what we call remote engineer access, and this is our mobile comms piece for our engineers in the field. Written in HTML5, so allows on and offline capabilities. Currently being ported into iOS and Android, coming out in the next release. But we'll show you what we have today, and we have thousands of engineers running around the world using this particular application. Resizes the device, so very much about if you're looking for a BYOD type approach, effectively whatever device it will resize to the screen resolution, tablets, phones, whatever works for each client. Various pieces of information, we won't go through all of those today, but very much about visibility for our engineer. Lists of calls in priority order, allowing engineers to view calls, look at where they are with these particular jobs. We can pass documents backwards and forwards. So if there are some RAMs, risk assessments, when an engineer arrives on site, there may be a specific diagram that's been passed by the office directly to the engineer so he can view this. Some of the other things that we see more and more key are history. Engineers are not necessarily going back to this asset. They may not be the guy that normally covers this. So it's about giving them information very quickly, very simply, without overwhelming them. keeping it simple for the engineers to mine in previous history, look what other engineers have done, what parts were used very, very simply, very, very quickly with a click. So giving engineers access to information very, very quickly is very much key. Other areas of the application, we have things such as supervisor mode, allowing supervisors to go in and look at list of calls within areas, possibly reschedule them around their team. Doesn't fit for everybody, but it's an option. Again, van stocks, we touched on it previously, but very much about the control and also the stock takes that are required linked back to that. The reverse logistics piece, and again, to do with stock, we've mentioned it a few times, it's overlooked, but we see it as a real key area. Parts being in transit, being booked in, being collected, being returned by engineers, very much a key part with people looking after more and more expensive stock items. We can obviously do all the closure of calls that you would expect, customer signatures, service checklists as we call them, so we're capturing information pertinent to the call, producing things like CP12s or compliance documentation directly from the engineer's reports.
Okay, so I can see there's a settings tool there at the bottom, Kevin. How configurable is this for the engineer? You know, is it up to the service manager or the line manager to kind of decide what their engineer can see? Can the engineers kind of move things around to get their own workflow? Because everybody has their own slightly different take on how to, their own best practice, their own comfortable way of working. What's configurable here? We
can configure any of these, whether we have access to them, how they're renamed. We can relabel the system throughout. But it's very much about the office being in control, and settings are set by the internal administrators, so we can define what engineers can see, what access they have. Coming back to, we mentioned it earlier, it may be a third-party contractor that we don't want as much access, so we're very much defining it to just the calls that they're doing for us.
And you can, so say it's a third-party contractor, you can restrict the elements that they have to what you want to give them control of.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. We talk a lot about data collection in the field. How can the engineers utilise, let's say they're out checking asset number 1, but asset number 2 is under warranty. It might be a good idea for them to just pop over and kind of update some critical KPI figures on that asset. Is that possible for them to update the notes and the pieces live in the field? Yeah,
absolutely. It may be that the location has changed of an asset and we want to go in and change that information. We do control that, and that's down to our customers to control whether they allow engineers to do such things, but it's very much about the workflow, the process hidden behind there. It may be that some of our clients are just doing risk assessments on assets, so they're just gathering information, and that can be pushed down, that the engineers have to obviously complete that information before they leave site.
And one final question on this. Workflow is obviously very important, and in certain industries, the health and safety aspect is critical. And you can have an engineer that's got 20 years under his belt in terms of experience, but having a checklist that says, have you switched the electricity off? Everybody can make that mistake, especially if it's late in the day, they've had a tough day, or it's busy, etc., etc. Is there functionality to kind of put a block of a workflow? You cannot complete A until you complete, cannot complete B until you completed A, etc.
Of course. And this is, in our world, what we call a service checklist. This checklist may come on arrival. Have you completed risk assessments? It may come on completion. It may, when we move job into a certain status, ask questions. And these are defined by the client. They may not necessarily be serviced. They may be being fed back to the CRM system.
Yeah.
Is there any equipment on site that we don't maintain? So the engineers can be capturing all this data, and how the customer uses that data can be used in an intelligent manner.
And just one last piece. I'm pretty sure you mentioned this, Kevin, but just to reiterate and cover it. So it's currently a HTML5 based app that can work offline as well as online.
Yes.
So there's offline capability. I assume that then just once it's back on collection updates. Is that right?
Yeah, and it will show the engineer whether they're on and offline and make it very apparent if they haven't synced any jobs, but syncing them when they go back online.
Okay, and that's currently completely device agnostic, although, like you said, there's native app in the pipeline.
Absolutely, yes. So we see people running it on laptops, tablets, whatever works for each client.
And so the final piece of the puzzle today, at least, is integration. We're living in a world of data lakes and data rivers and data mountains and all other sorts of topography of data. It's very easy for companies to kind of get a little bit lost with this whole point, but it's also massively important that data flows from one system to another. I'll be honest, as a layman, I get a little bit lost sometimes with some of the more technical kind of terminology, so that's what I kind of like to kind of pick up on really here. I mean, as a service guy, as a guy that gets ops, that gets the customer value piece, but not necessarily the technology, or to an extent, but not to the level of my CIO, etc. What is it that I'm looking for in terms of integration? Because am I being a bit dumb here and thinking in the 21st century everything should just plug into each other and play nicely? Yeah.
That's the vision for the future, but I don't think we're quite there yet, Chris.
Yeah.
We integrate with lots of different products, and it really is dependent on what our client requires. And going back to the technology, that facilitates the integration, but often we're led by legacy systems, which may not necessarily have slick tools for integration. So we're really here to work with our customers and integrate with the different touch points that they're looking to integrate with.
Theoretically, is integration possible with any legacy system? Is there certain things that are red flags that you kind of go, right, actually, we might have to start from scratch here rather than kind of build upon existing foundations? Or
there are some legacy systems that are very difficult, but less and less in the modern age. We tend to find very, very few that we can't work with. The technology, we're currently doing products to look at linking more products in more an off-the-shelf situation. And this is really coming along technology-wise. But currently, we're led by our customer, we're led by the products that they have in place, and there are lots of common financial products out there that we link to off the shelf. But really, it's not for us to tell our customer how they should be running other areas of their business.
Is there typically a field service management system? How many different other key business systems would it have to plug into? I'm assuming a CRM, maybe an ERP as well, financial systems you mentioned. There's a number of integrations there,
absolutely, yes, and it really does depend on the client. As a starting point, it would be a financial system. We have a lot of service-based organisations that run our product as an ERP for service, and using our financial system purely for ledgers in a QuickBooks Sage type approach. Obviously, with our larger clients, there may be an ERP system, an MRP system, and we're purely running the service organisation. So it really does depend where that cut-off piece is. For some of our clients, going back to the stock piece we mentioned, stock is being held in a manufacturing system, and we're dragging down service stock. For other customers, they're holding their whole stock inventory. So it's really what's right for each client. It's just important that the technology facilitates the business process rather than us dictating.
Obviously, cloud's a huge conversation. You guys have been part of that SaaS web-based evolution and revolution since it started, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Does that make things a lot easier? I mean, is anybody coming to you these days and saying, I need something on premise, or is it?
It still is on premise. It happens, and people have their own reasons for that. And although we were one of the evangelists when it came to the cloud, we're not here to tell people they're wrong if they still want to remain. And again, the cloud has added layers of complexity with integration. But with modern web services and the tools available, we really shouldn't hit any stumbling blocks.
Just to go right back to the beginning of this conversation around integration then, I mentioned everything should plug into each other and everything should work wonderfully. How do we future-proof to make sure that actually that vision of the future, what we're buying now, what we're investing in now, the tools that we're investing in now, how do we make sure that actually we're ripe for that we don't, to use a cliche, that we don't buy a Betamax?
Absolutely. Very much. We've been working with APIs and web services for a long time now, and we're very much about future-proofing those. We have to be aware of the data being passed. We can't start changing structures, tables. Everything has to be future-proofed, as you say, so that it will work today as it does tomorrow. As you go through our upgrade cycles on both our product and the third-party product, we have to make sure that we keep the communication line as it was.
Excellent. Okay. We're just going to dive into a quick Q&A, Kevin, so let me just get my notes together. Give me 1 second. Okay, Kevin, so we've had a few questions coming in from the audience, and I've got a couple of my own that have come in through the session. First of all, one of the questions that's come in, and this, I think it's somebody that's got their finger on the pulse here. We're seeing a lot of talk about platforms. That seems to be the buzz across. And I'll be honest, I'm here at Field Service News, we've been talking about that an awful lot as well. And we've seen Microsoft, Oracle kind of investing in the market. We've seen General Electronic Digital investing in the market. Kind of big players coming back in. And there's this talk about, and it goes a bit back to the integration piece. This talk about the platform and the ease of integration. Why is best of breed then a better alternative to the more generic platform approach?
Well, we see a place for both, and very much dependent on the client. But in our world, we see many people that have legacy systems, whether they be financial, whether they be ERP, that just don't offer the depth of functionality required from a service team. So where we sit is integrating with those products, but we do believe that our product with 30 years of development is not something that can come into the market overnight and add value. Okay.
A point to put to you then, to just play devil's advocate here. Obviously 30 years is a lot of heritage there. We were talking about future-proofing earlier, weren't we? How can smaller companies, companies that are best of breed, that more agile, that can kind of bring these newer solutions to the surface quicker, but can you guarantee that 5, 10, 15 years down the line you'll have the same kind of planned out roadmap as somebody like Microsoft, or as somebody that has been in the industry across a number of spheres, that has that clout?
Absolutely, and this is something we get questioned a lot on. Recently, part of the acquisition by Avatic has been to more formalise, give us proper roadmaps, take us away from the cottage industry. We're really much looking at, within Europe, the European space of service, consolidation. You're quite right, we see some of the smaller companies having to fall away, not keeping up with technology. So we need a big investment back into the R&D of the product. This is very much what Avatic's all about.
Okay. How important is it that R&D goes back? And if we're looking at companies, because obviously, anybody out there, whether they're looking at their first step away from Excel and post-it notes and whiteboards, maybe even, and T-cards, or maybe there's people out there that are using previous generation legacy systems. We're going to be doing our due diligence. We're going to be looking not just at the technology but at the companies themselves. What kind of figure should we be looking at if we say, right, how much do you invest back in R&D from your annual revenue or profits, etc.?
Well, our development team is just over a third of the company, so and we're looking to grow that. That's from the Tesseract sphere. From the Avatic point of view, it's far larger.
Okay.
So we're very much about trying to get the technologies right, which we've done it historically, but we want to keep that moving forward.
And how does that work as a rule of thumb? So if you were to say compare that to, without naming any names or shaming any competitors, how does that compare? Is that kind of a generic figure? Is that kind of, right, these guys have really taken that seriously, or is this kind of, what's kind of, is there an industry benchmark that our audience should be kind of thinking, right, anything below say 15% is a red flag?
It's very difficult and different, but if you look at the investment put to date into any product, the technology, the platform, it takes huge investments to rewrite software into modern technologies. Tesseract was always at the forefront of bringing it to the latest technologies, and we carry on that ethos, staying ahead of the curve. It's very, very difficult to have to worry about old products that are sitting on old technologies that may be functionally rich, but at some point they're going to be mothballed, and we very much want our customers for the long term.
Okay. Let's go back to some of the questions that have come in there, because I kind of leapt on that first one and kind of peppered you with a few of my own, so apologies for that. But there's a great question here, essentially on return on investment, and it's a question I see an awful lot, and I think it's probably one of the most fundamental questions when building a case to take to the board. How quick can we expect to see ROI? And I'm going to put that to you in kind of two tiers here. Number one, with your engineer hat on, your service manager hat on, in essentially, and in a generic kind of application of a service management solution. And then number two, more with your Tesseract hat on, what's the kind of what's the time frame for your customers? So first of all, kind of generically, and then
it's generically, and it depends on the client, and we see many clients with different ROIs that they're looking to achieve, whether that be the scheduling piece, whether that be the stock management piece or the contract management piece. So clients are different. You certainly should be looking within the first year of going live of seeing massive improvements, but each client really has to focus on what they see as an ROI. It's very difficult for us to preach as a provider, maybe not the solution that the company's looking to save costs with.
Yeah, okay. That ties into another question we've got here around KPIs. We've looked at 5 different areas here, 4 of which obviously are affecting day-to-day operations, mission critical elements of the day-to-day's running. KPIs is a conversation that comes up an awful lot.
Absolutely.
What should lead the way? Should the KPIs, because the question is actually how can the settings be matched to the KPIs?
Yeah.
But I'm going to take that on a little bit and ask, should the technology and the solution lead what the KPIs are, or should the KPIs lead how you're utilising the solution?
Definitely the second point, Chris.
Okay.
Really, it's what does the business want from a product. Our product is a great product, but it's very much driven by how it's utilised and what results people are looking to achieve. And they should always set out looking what we want to achieve from the product, not what necessarily the product's going to give us. We'll see wins throughout an implementation on things that have been overlooked as part of the process, but very much each client should be looking for what they want from a solution.
As a vendor, how much responsibility or how much onus is there on you to advise your customers on this? Is there an element of, you're a technology provider, but is there an element of consultancy that should come into this, where you should be saying, look, okay, you know your business better than we ever will, of course. However, we work with X, Y, and Z number of companies within your sphere, or I always say even within the field service management sector, and as a broad spectrum, we always see about 70% of the shared goals and shared pain points, and then there's that 20-30% that are kind of vertically specific.
Yeah.
Do you do that, and how much should you do that, and kind of lead your customers in saying, well, actually, are you measuring mean time to repair just because everyone else is doing it, when really you should be looking at other KPIs, etc.?
Yeah, and it goes back to what the client really wants from the product, but also as part of an implementation, our consultancy's team job is to play a little bit of devil's advocate. Why are you following these processes? What are you looking to achieve? Are they historic? Or is there actually a result that you're measuring at the end? So very much it's about questioning, not necessarily copying today's process from an old product into a new product. It's very much about realigning the business and letting the business move forward for growth and challenges that may not be apparent in that vertical of the service market. There are in others, questioning those, identifying them, let our customers become trailblazers in their own environments.
Okay. And is that something that you would expect from... Is that an expected role of a provider, of a vendor in the market, do you think, these days? Is that something, if we're looking and we're looking to find, again, probably the first thing we're going to look at is technology, like we've done today.
Of course.
But then there's this due diligence, there's looking at the future, there's looking at all these other aspects of what makes a software vendor more than just a vendor, actually a partner.
Absolutely.
Are these kind of things that are add-ons that you guys do that you don't see reflected, or are these things what we should expect from any provider?
It's difficult to say, but from our perspective, we're always looking as our product is a very clever toolkit, but it's only as good as it's implemented and used. So it's a partnership approach. We're looking for our customers to have huge benefits, and how to streamline their processes. A product on its own won't allow that. It's part of the consultative approach that we're very, very keen to provide our customers. Okay, excellent. Look, I'm just starting to look at the time, and we're kind of coming towards the end of the session, so I've just got one last question, which is from myself again, Kevin, and it's a bit of a broad one really, but we've touched on a couple of times the acquisition by Avatic. You're not alone in this market at the minute in terms of having investment or there being M&A activity. We've seen investment from the likes of Microsoft, Oracle, General Electric even into the space. We've seen tons of private equity money pouring into the field service management space. Just from your perspective sitting within the industry,
what is it that's suddenly made field service management the hot sector for investment? And is it about the technology that you and your competitors are providing, or is it about the fact that service is suddenly starting to get a little bit more attention in the kind of the in the boardroom?
Absolutely, and it really over the years, and in my experience, I see service becoming more and more professional. It's a very sticky area for any business with reoccurring revenues, rather than box shifting, long-term relationships. Service itself now has become a profit centre.
Yeah.
We saw 15 years ago where it was almost a necessary evil as a manufacturer. You had to provide it. But now, service done properly and more professionally can bring in good revenues for any business.
Excellent. Well, we're kind of at the end of the session now, folks. Kevin, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Kris.
For those of you that have submitted questions that we haven't had a chance to get around to, I know Kevin and his team will be kind of touching base with everybody that's logged into the webinar. And Kevin, I'm sure you'll be able to get back to people directly on any remaining questions.
Of course.
Excellent. In that case, folks, it's just time for me to go home and read the manifestos ready for election day tomorrow here in the UK. Thank you all so much for joining us, as always, and we'll see you soon. Take care.